What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. The rock type is oddly important in Pokémon. It's been inherently tied to the early game since the very beginning, and the gyms. We've had repeated fossil Pokémon over the years, and have seen consistent updates to the trope of collecting a new stone 3-stage line near the start of your journey. However, I say near the start because despite the persistence, you can't always pick up a rock type right when you leave your house, so that would indeed impact which game you might want to play if, say, you wanted a fully rock team. That and the general layout and makeup of the regions themselves, so let's go through all of the Pokemon games and see where you might be able to do your best hiker impression. Now, even though Kanto has Brock at the start, it doesn't afford the player the same courtesy, because we can only get a Geodude after the first gym in Mount Moon, and in some versions of the game you can actually get Onix here too, but even having two Pokemon isn't going to help against Misty when they're both 4 times weak to water. And that's the thing about Kanto. They don't have too much variety in their rock types, as they're all either half ground, half water, or the one lone flying type. And as cool as prehistoric Pokemon are, having all of their weaknesses so centralized is a real drawback. And besides, you can't even actually use all of the fossils at once, so I think we're safe to put all of the many versions of Kanto in reserve. Unova also has a shockingly small number of rock types, at least in the new Gen 5 offerings, starting with Roggenrola after the first gym, which might be enough to get you past Lenora, sure, but then you get a Dwebble near the desert and your choice of one of the fossils, and that's it for the whole game. You could get away with Skyla and maybe Bryson, but when you can only build half of a team, things are looking pretty dire. I'm not even sure that Terrakion could save you on this one. It's a bit better in Black and White 2 with some more options spread throughout, but with the strongest gym being water, you're better off not wasting your time with rock here. Sinnoh is also similar to Kanto in that you first pick up Geodude and Onix, but this time, you can actually do it before the gym. So you can sort of mirror Rourke, except for the Cranidos, obviously. That would be locked away with Shieldon in the Underground, which only opens up after beating the second gym. The good news is there's a bike path straight down to where you can revive the fossils, which is much more convenient than most other regions. But the bad news is that the second gym uses the grass type, so you're once again stuck with 2 quad-weak Pokemon, and you're unlikely to be able to progress. Besides, even if you somehow could get past it, I doubt a new fossil or Bonsly would help much against the fighting or water-type gyms. So Rock just sees a really bad matchup in Sinnoh, with all of its many weaknesses popping up somewhere, and your best answer for them is a Probopass, so things are looking pretty dire. But then Hoenn is a combination of the last 2 problems, since the Cave by Roxanne only has Whismur for some reason, so you can't get started until Granite Cave by Dewford. But then the bad matchups come in with fighting, which is especially bad for Aeron. I love the Aggron line, but with Graveler's electric immunity in the 3rd gym, and Lairon taking neutral fire damage in the 4th, it's not going to be very valuable for a while. However, I have Hoenn a bit higher because if you can make it to the mid-game, you've got the fossils in the desert, and either Solrock or Lunatone in Meteor Falls, along with eventually after diving a half-water type down the line, so those extra typings really help out. Pair that with more traditional options such as Nosepass and Rhyhorn, and you've suddenly got a shot at the second half of the game, especially if you pick up Cradilly to counter the prominent water trainers. So I can't in good conscience recommend you try Hoenn, but it's got maybe the best turnaround of any region. I was shocked by Alola because for the first Rock-type Elite Four trainer, you would think that it would be a lot better. But you can't even get any rock Pokemon until you access the Poke Ride, so you can ram Tauros into new places and get you a Rockruff and other options. But considering the kahuna of Melee Island uses fighting Pokemon, you'd better hope that your Carbink's Fairy type is enough to get you by. Spoiler alert, it's not, but it gets even worse after that, because Corsola is super difficult to get while fishing, and Akala has basically nothing until the very end, since you can't get any of the fossils until Coney City, and you can only find a Nosepass just before Olivia has the evolved form already. I do love me some Minior, but finding it right next to the Electric Trial is just cruel. And this is easily the latest that we have ever seen a Geodude, which is a huge shame because the Alolan version would have been much appreciated on the last island. The island scan Pokemon are nice for numbers, but they aren't likely to make a huge difference. and even the surprising Ultra Beast inclusion doesn't add much. The Ultra games only have a few more options, and there's only so much weight that the new Lycanroc form can pull, so I think it's pretty clear that not everyone can be Olivia here in Alola. The Kalos region on the whole is not actually that bad, but I have to dock it at least a bit because you can't capture any rock types until well after the first gym. The Glittering Cave on Route 9 is the first time that we get access to any stone, including two of the best fossils in the series that we can revive in the town right next to it. Not to mention the Rock Smash exclusive Pokemon you can get right after that, but after a hefty drought, things really turn around, offering up even more options in Reflection Cave, and this time you don't even have to rely solely on your Carbink against the fighting gym, so that's great. And later in the game you have a version exclusive opportunity for Mega Evolution. So while Kalos ends up being pretty fun, you'll be playing an entirely different game for close to 2 hours before you ever even touch a rock. In almost the opposite setup, we have Johto, where you wouldn't really think it was that good, but by picking up a Geodude north of the first route, and then trading for an Onix, you've got more than enough to beat the first flying gym. Honestly, the Sprout Tower is gonna be way harder for you. But if you get past that, even without any new Pokemon, Bugsy is a breeze for Rock. And I would think that you could beat Whitney with that pairing too, which would net you a brand new Sudowoodo. Now, your only real hope against Chuck is Shuckle, which isn't a great counter, but it's all you've got. And other than a Corsola and Rhyhorn and Victory Road, that's it. So Johto does have severely limited options, but its layout means that Rock can carve out a successful niche for itself. I would put it even higher, but for some reason there are Gen 2 rock types that you can't find in Johto, so that is a bit of a letdown. Getting close to the top is Galar, since you can find a Choodle super early, and of course it evolves into a rock type, with a fair amount more that can be found in the wild area, but you're going to want to prioritize one of the bug types because of the grass type gym. Otherwise your team has got no shot against Milo. And then honestly you're gonna have a hard time with Nessa's gym too, but you could overwhelm her with sheer numbers, I guess. And I would personally recommend a Steam Engine Roly-Coly so that you can have some sort of strategy. Luckily Kabu's not too bad, and really I've never advised specific versions before, but Shield's gym choices are objectively better for a rock trainer than Swords. Sure, you're weak to Lapras, but it's also weak to rock right back. So just Gigantamax and take it out already. Unfortunately, the Isle of Armor doesn't have a lot to add, but the Crown Tundra offers more, like some wild fossil options for the first time. So you can get some of my favorite rock types across Galar, but the early game being stacked against you means that it can't be number 1, even with legendary backup like Regirock and Terrakion. But speaking of legends, I bet you forgot about Hisui, didn't you? Once again, we see the old staples of Geodude and Onix, which you're probably tired of by this point, but the structure of this game being quite different means that you can get away with much fewer Pokemon on your team for longer. And when the major bosses of each area are largely beaten by dodging, you can reasonably beat the Obsidian Fieldlands even with the limited rock types. And then you could get your own Kleavor to match, which should be a big help with the bug type being added, because the Crimson Mirelands do bring in some other options, but they're also weak to grass, and you're gonna need something for that by the end. Now, the Cobalt Coastlands are fairly sparse, but it does give you the chance to use the new Hisui and Growlithe line, so that's a fun exclusive to this game, and you might as well go ahead and try them out. But then the Coronet Highlands clean up with pretty much all of the rest of the rock types in the region up on the mountaintop, other than the Hisui and Avalugg, I suppose, but its typing is one of the worst ever created, so it's a bit of a mixed bag. But I do think the Hisui region, despite having rock types spread across the whole game, has a good composition of candidates for a team. And the rustic atmosphere would probably get you the closest to feeling like a hiker in any of the games. But that does leave the final region to be Paldea. Now, this is not simply because Gen 9 offers so many Pokemon in each location, it's more the ability to go seek out the rock types before you have to go do other things. You can grab a few options before you need to go to the first gym, but it is a bug type gym, so it's not going to be that hard. What you really need to worry about is the grass gym up next. But things are different here because you not only have the chance at some very strong teammates or outright type advantages to use, but the DLC is so much more helpful than the Galar region. The teal mask brings basically another full team to the table, with new typings attached, and the best part is that you can go to Kitakami before you ever even get to a gym that might cause you trouble. And then the Indigo Disc brings in a new crop of rare finds like Cleavor, Minior, or the Alolan Geodude line, which hasn't been seen since Gen 7 and can help immensely against water types. So the variety of stones that we can get and the fact that we can go rock collecting at our leisure from the start really puts Gen 9 ahead, ignoring all of the disadvantages and easily climbing to the peak. But honestly, if you have the grit, you can mine out a decent team in most of the locations and polish a diamond in the rough, because there are certainly hidden gems anywhere you look. But where do you think rock types would be the best to use? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded!